it over to Zach.
Great. Thank you very much.
Next week.
Me too.
Oh, no, you're not. You wait your turn.
Thanks again for coming in this morning. Like she said, my name is Zach Hammond. I'm one of the planning guidance consultants. My typical day-to-day job is meeting with people individually across the state, usually at college campuses, to review whether it be your investments, making sure we're not too aggressive, not too conservative, and what we're on track to have, whether it be in a poor market or an average market. Today, I was asked to come out and do a presentation on what it takes to get to retirement, maximizing your savings, and focusing on ways to be a little bit more tax efficient when you finally do get to retirement. And hopefully, one day we all reach that point.
Next week.
Yeah. Some things I like to focus on that come up on just about every single appointment I'm in would be thinking about a Social Security strategy. Of course, the longer you wait, the more you're able to receive. However, there are a lot of strategies the Social Security Administration allows you to do, whereas thinking about maybe filing suspending, claim now, collect later, may end up actually giving you more than waiting until your full retirement age or wait until 70 and till you're 70. Thinking about a withdrawal strategy, making sure we don't deplete our funds too early, and also having the right type of assets to withdraw from. Ways to save more for income later on in life, and also give you some opportunities to pass those savings on to heirs if possible. And then focus on some other ways to save that may not be available with the college plan. I know some popular topics out there are Roth IRAs and annuities. Okay, so here's the typical curve of what an average lifespan will look like for a retirement plan. Start out saving for retirement, building it up over time through contributions as well as growth in the market. And then you start your transition into retirement, where we start the distribution phase. Following slides talk a little bit more about the risks of not having a plan in place, or the amount you're contributing, as well as how you withdraw the money. So this slide I like to look at because it gives you an idea of what a portfolio can look like over your retirement lifespan. And the important thing is to look at the withdrawal rate. So you see an individual who started with $500,000 in 1972. Typical withdrawal rate for someone who's successful is usually between 4 to 5%. And you can see across the top here all of the either tragedies, wars that have occurred during this entire time frame. The person with a 4% withdrawal strategy, even with all of these situations, ended up with more money at the end. And this is someone with a portfolio of just 50% stock, 40% bonds, and then 10% short-term investments. You see the individuals with the larger withdrawal rate, their assets are depleted much more quickly.
Is that withdrawal rate annual?
Yes. Yeah, 4% annually.
And that's 4% on the 1 million?
On the 500,000. It starts out at 500,000. I'm sorry. Yes, it starts out at 500,000 in 1972.
Okay.
And the person
So this person's already retired?
Right, they
Okay.
retired, and they start. This is the person who retired.
In
Starts with a
1972.
withdrawal rate,
Gotcha.
and they're doing a 4% withdrawal rate every year from the portfolio. They have this mix of investments in their 401k, IRA, and they take a 4% withdrawal rate. The 4% is also about what you see with the minimum required distribution. Once you turn 70 and a half, it's around that same percentage as well. So the person withdrawing 4% with that allocation over this time frame ended up with more money than they started with.
And that's just from their 403b, 401k.
Exactly.
That's not including their Social Security.
Right. investing. I know every day I speak to people who are very concerned, saying things are going too well, the way the government's being run. They're easy about how much higher we can go. But as you can see here, you don't have to be too aggressive to still give yourself the ability to retire on your savings. Of course, it's not always guaranteed things will be done as well as it has in the past, but historically the market has trended upward with the ups and downs. Yes?
So you're saying with that graph that somebody who's taking 10% a year would be depleted by 1980? Is that what that's saying?
Yes, with
right? Only 6 years?
Right, with the market conditions as well. Correct.
But you could look at that they used that for that interim before they did Social Security or other things too, right?
Right. So that
was just based on
this is just one account, not focusing on anything else. So if you had maybe other accounts in play, and you had a higher withdrawal rate, then at a certain point, then you'd start kicking it into another account or Social Security, or if you had a pension. This is just for the one account that we'd be looking at here.
So,
yeah.
if you could excuse my ignorance, would this be our TICREF account then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That's not, TICREF is not a pension fund,
Your
right?
403B. No, it is not a pension.
Okay.
The Maryland State Retirement System is a pension,
Okay.
and then you're in a 403B. If you have TICREF or Fidelity, you're in a 403B plan.
Okay.
Right.
If you're a Maryland State Retirement System, you're in a pension plan.
So generally, depending on the market, 4% is usually a good way to go
For withdrawal rate, right.
on average.
Yeah, so regardless if you're with Kraft or Fidelity, both companies will give you a mixture of investments to suit your needs, like what we looked at before. It's more of a focus on what your monthly budget is to get you to that point. Yeah.
Could you explain the marked difference between 4 and 5% withdrawal? I mean, look at that. You have one dying in 1995 and the other one is soaring over $1 million, over 1%. What's going on there? Somebody happy with their pen or?
Let's see here.
He's talking the difference
blue and the
between the green
Right.
line and the blue line.
It's so it's a compounding effect that the 1% can have over the 20 years. So year after year, that 1% additional withdrawal compounds over time and depletes the account a little bit faster, or quite a bit faster actually. So it's a kind of a fine line that you're looking at when it comes to 4 to 5, 6 to 7% yearly. It's really the compounding factor that's what you're looking at. So when I talk about like a Roth IRA, when I talk about the rule of 72 people, basically how long it takes for that portfolio to double based upon your average annual return. So if you have an average annual return of 7%, it'll take about 10 years for that to double your account principal to double. So that's kind of the same factor here is the withdrawal rate compounding over time until you actually split that money down to a zero balance.
Is $500,000 like typical?
It's not. I don't think anything's typical because I was speaking to you earlier. The past 5 years, I was one of our planners in the Cincinnati area, where you can have a pretty good lifestyle, large house for much lower than this area. So it's different for everybody, especially once you start moving state to
But you
state.
probably know like what people typically have in their like accounts to be,
So with Maryland,
right?
it depends on which path you take. So a lot of people will have the pension, and that'll cover their basic essential expenses, and then they'll have their supplemental 403B plan that'll cover their discretionary expenses. 500,000 to $1 million is probably about the average I see.
Thank you.
See, it's not gonna be next week, is it?
No.
But,
I might win the lottery, then yes.
and that's usually a joint amount, is what you're usually.
Between me and my husband,
Right.
you
Usually.
better step it up.
But,
What is she drinking?
It's just decaf, I promise.
The next slide here shows you a little bit more about the dangers of not doing anything with your money. So work with a lot of people who are concerned, very concerned around the market going forward. They finally reached the point where they're getting ready to retire. They just want to sit in cash, put it in CDs, where there's not much of anything at this point to protect what they have and just live off of it. The problem with that is inflation. The average inflation from 96 to 2012 is 3%. So you can see over 20, 25 years, average retirement lifespan, starting value of 50,000, what it ends up being worth with these varying percentage inflation rates if you're not investing that money. So those who sit in cash to protect what they have, they don't want to lose money. They really are losing money due to the inflation rates year after year. Again, that's compounding and taking away from the value of the money.
You may be covering this in a future slide, but since you just spoke to it, the people that are concerned about losing, there are funds or different things that they can be in that are less aggressive.
Right.
And typically that would be a strategy that people who are getting close to retirement, that's a strategy that they would take, is to be in something less aggressive, correct?
Exactly. So whether you're Fidelity, TI Cref, you have what's known as life cycle or target date funds, start out more aggressive and keep getting more and more conservative over time, so that when you reach the point of retirement, you're still invested in the market, but you have a much lower stock exposure than what you did when you're in your 20s or 30s. And that way, if there is a downturn in the market, you're not hit as bad as you would have been in the earlier years. In the earlier years, yes, it affects you, but at the same time, you're also buying into a lower market, hoping that it then increases. But in retirement, you don't have as much time to make that up. So regardless of which firm you're with, either have a fund that does that for you or have an advisor that helps you rebalance year after year to reallocate stocks to bonds to short term. Yep.
So in that example, you're talking about the closer you get, you can change your percentage that goes into, say, the tie part, which is the guaranteed, and the CREF, which is the stock part. You can switch the percentages and have more of it go to tie. But can you, say you have a huge chunk in the CREF, can you actually take money out of that and put it into the tie, or can you just change the percentage going forward?
So you can change your percentages. Now I know with TIA Cref they have like an annuity type product in their account where it only allows you to withdraw or roll over a certain amount of money every year once you reach retirement age. They also have something that Fidelity has, the life cycle target date funds that automatically, you just move the money into the fund. It's known as a fund of funds, and it keeps rebalancing, reallocating year after year, where all you're doing is adding the money and then slowly decreasing its stock exposure over time. But you could also take the initiative or step yourself if you're doing a mixture of annuities or funds to move more money into like a bond fund or an annuity fund with TIA Cref.
Because as you get closer, I'm not as concerned about switching the percentages as much as losing a big chunk in the CREF part that I've already built up if something happens like happened 7 years ago or whatever.
Right. And CREF
will just lose money.
And CREF has funds that do continuously become more conservative for you over time. So unless I don't know if you're working with someone to help you rebalance that, or you use one of their portfolio review tools to help change that mixture over time and rebalance. So either you have to take the initiative to do it yourself if you have a mixture of funds, or you're in a fund of funds or the life cycle funds that do that for you, does that for you automatically. And those funds usually have, like Fidelity calls them freedom funds, and they'll have a year afterwards, like 2030, 2035. Other companies, they look the exact same way, and they all work just about the same way. You pick the fund closest to when you're looking to retire around 65, and that fund's allocation keeps changing over time for you. So you do have growth potential, but at the same time you're reducing your risk as you get older.
Do you, based on these 2, 3, 4% inflation, do you have any information of what the inflation rate has been over the past decade?
Yeah, so from the average from 1926 to 2012 has been 3%. I think it's been around 2% or so the past decade. So another risk outside of the market risk is outliving our money. Everyone is living longer. So you can see here, typically males don't live as long as females. And couples typically live longer than males. I was at a workshop a couple weeks ago in Florida. The main focus was women investing. I learned a couple statistics that were a little bit eye-opening and depressing. 9 out of 10 women will be solely responsible for their finances at some point in their life, and 80% of women will die single. So a lot of times what's important to think about is having a joint strategy if you are married, so that if someone does pass away early, the other spouse is able to take the reins and know what income's available to them and what they have access to. So I figured for the women in the room, something to think about. Unfortunately, we don't live as long as you do.
Sad for you guys.
Healthcare costs, something else to think about going forward. It seems like that's only going up, unfortunately. The average cost of healthcare in retirement for a couple with an average life expectancy is $220,000. And that's, if you look at the small print, it's based upon a couple retiring in 2013, 65 years or older with an average lifespan of 82 for female or male, 85 for female.
So that's the remainder, that's from 2013 to when they reach 82.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's not even 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for a female, it would be 20 years.
Right. And that's just average. So.
And that was healthcare costs. Does that include what they pay into healthcare, or is that just their medical claims? Is that
Yep,
everything?
so the calculation takes into account cost sharing provisions such
Okay.
as prescription drug coverage, premiums, out-of-pocket costs,
Okay.
certain welfare services by Medicare, so that's including everything.
Is that somebody who's insured?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep, exactly.
And insured with Medicare or insured with a supplemental as well?
It also includes a supplemental. I think they're also talking about Part D, including Part D Medicare.
So in addition to Medicare and supplemental, it's $220,000?
That's including all of your costs going into Medicare, your premiums, your
Co-insurance,
this is-
claims,
yeah.
prescription drugs.
Still, that's
It's a lot of money.
It's
a lot of money because your premiums are what?
Well, for Medicare,
$5,000 a year.
Medicare, it's prorated on your income. Because everyone, I used to think Medicare was free. It's not. Part A is, Part B's not. And then if you purchase a supplemental, for an employee plus spouse that's over the age of 65, I think the medical portion is $400 and some. I think it's over $400 a month for our plan, for the retiree health plan.
$400 and some a month.
And that doesn't include dental or
But
prescription.
you're still talking under $20,000
Well, I'm just,
for a premium.
yeah,
So you're saying that $200,000 is going to be out of pocket?
for 20 years.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For-
That's
for
right.
Sorry.
20
Yeah, over
years.
the
Right.
entire lifespan from
Right.
when you retire till you die.
20 years for a female.
Yeah.
That's for
So
sure.
it's an eye-opening statistic.
Yeah, for 2 people.
Right, exactly. 2 people, a couple, retiring in 2013 at 65 until their end of life at 82 for male and 85 for female. And like she said, this includes basically everything except for dental or long-term care. Here is just something to take a look at when you're thinking about your investment mix. Shows you the highest annual return for a certain mixture of funds, as well as the lowest or the worst performing year, average annual range for that year. Of course, short term, that was many years ago when interest rates were much higher. Now you're looking at far less than percent on average for someone sitting in short term. And this is from 1926 to 2011.
I don't really understand this chart.
So if you, for example, if you are, let's look at the most aggressive. That's typically you are just just about all stock.
Okay.
The best year you would have had, you would have been up 162%. The worst would have been you would have been down over 67%.
So you still made out
On average.
on average?
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you started out investing that year that was down, then you would have lost almost 70% that one year. But
So you would want to be somewhere, you wouldn't want to be in that, you want to be a mix.
well, you start out more aggressive, the younger years, and then you slowly move to the right as you get older.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's what I was speaking about earlier, those funds and CREF, Fidelity, Vanguard. Those are the types of funds that automatically do that for you. Here's what average retirees spend on some common expenses. And the green color is if you're age 65 to 74. The blue is age 75 plus. Transportation and groceries and healthcare, like we were talking about earlier, around $400 a month was on average, like Madeline said.
Well, they shouldn't still have a mortgage.
Shouldn't, but like I said, moving from Cincinnati to Maryland, I'm surprised anyone can ever pay off their house. So
Well, don't they, isn't that one of the things they say that you should have paid off before you retire?
typically, yes.
Oh, boy.
Still have taxes.
Yeah,
You
right.
still will have
Taxes,
taxes.
property taxes, exactly.
Why is transportation so high?
I would imagine that's including things. Let's see here.
I mean, that's
It's
not.
including things,
Mine,
gas and
your
car payments.
grandchildren.
Gas,
Car
and
payments, and car insurance. So
What's covered under the insurance then?
that would be
Life?
right, just basic
Insurance
like insurance. The health care is on the right. That would be your
That's
health
covered.
insurance. So insurance would be, car, or maybe not car, but house, property, that type of insurance.
Okay.
So in the ideal world, if you can get rid of your mortgage and your car payments, you're in a lot better shape. Obviously, you
Yeah.
don't have to do that with those big costs. You can help it.
Right, and I mean,
your
just
car
now thinking about all the
payments,
costs
you're
I run
doing
through
squat.
every month
You're
with the
doing
car
daily
payment,
squat.
gas, and car insurance. So
You can spend $100.
it's up there.
Those are some active
Yeah.
retirees.
Right.
Oh, okay.
This is typical from Fidelity's research.
How far back does that go?
You can do
years.
for one fight. You can't do nothing.
This
We've got to
slide does not
readjust
give
this.
me, I would imagine this is average for recent years.
Some of those you've gone back like.
Yeah, the other one, the investment,
She's
we're
gonna-
going back to the basically beginning of the stock market. This one, I would imagine, this is average recent.
Within the last year or two.
Yeah, exactly. And this is also the average of at least,
Never can get retired.
let's see here.
I know.
It's based on averages of at least 50 households for which the data was available.
It's depressing.
So it's not always going to be the case for everyone. Everyone's different. However, this is what we've seen on average from those in the study.
Could you liven this up? This is very depressing.
We're getting there. We'll talk about all the good things you can do.
Informative.
Oh.
I figured I would start out with the downer type of things, and then
It's
all
like-
the positive things you can do at the end.
We're never
Leave
gonna
on a high note.
Hey, retirees are still traveling.
Not on
that's-
$119 a month.
That was for the 75-year-olds.
No, it wasn't. That's for 65 to 74.
Oh, that's recreation. But look at the transportation.
You can't buy
They're
an
still using-
airplane ticket for that.
Well, no, but they're still using their car. They're still driving. Look, they're still eating out.
There's what?
They're still eating out.
Yeah, well, I think I'd eat in more and,
A little too
you
much,
know.
yeah.
I'd shift that.
We're getting happier as we move on, I promise. So some things to think about, and this is what you'd want to work on with your planner, whether it be at Fidelity or whichever firm you're with, would be making sure you have reliable sources of income to cover those essential expenses that you're absolutely going to have to cover month to month, and then thinking of having other assets, so variable assets, whether it be money in your 403B, if you had a Roth, an individual account that you're investing in over the years to cover discretionary expenses such as travel, entertainment, your gym, family. So Social Security, pension, maybe annuitizing a portion of your retirement plan to give you guaranteed income month to month to cover what you absolutely have to have, and then having the variable assets that can fluctuate for your discretionary. Yeah.
When does Social Security kick in again? Is it 65, 62 and a half? I keep getting
It's
better numbers.
Early is
66.
62. Yeah. So right now it's 66. It's going to go up to 67.
It's 66 for Paul, it's 67 for me.
Right. And of course you can take it early at 62.
Yeah, but when I hit 66, it'll be 80.
Well, he's gonna tell you some of those little tricks, remember? Can you give us the scoop on Social Security? Because a lot of us well, I know for me, I don't even know if it's gonna be there when I retire.
Yeah, so I think it's a worry that we all have. It's a worry I guess I have for myself. But at the same time, you also have to remember the millions of people who are paying into it every single paycheck.
We've talked about it so often with restructuring it. Is it gonna be around? Is there gonna be enough money in the fund?
I'm not I wouldn't say I'm an expert or a White House insider when it comes to the laws and what they're doing, but at the same time, you also have to remember every single paycheck, millions upon millions of people are paying into it year after year. Of course, the baby boomer generation has
They depleted it.
They have to die off first for
right.
money.
But so,
We're gonna live a long time, so.
you have to also think about, if you look at your paycheck, the amount of money you pay into it year after year, and then there's millions upon millions of people doing that. I don't see it going away. Maybe at the worst, it may have reduced their growth of how much you get paid.
We have more kids, so we can
Wouldn't the
have more.
cost of minimum wage going up affect that as well?
Yeah, every wage, job market, everything can affect how much is being paid into Social
What's
Security.
your question? Oh,
Yeah.
the wage.
And I believe right now only 117,000 or so is what we're taxed on. So if you make above that, you're not paying in extra into Social Security. So I feel like when
Why
you,
not?
it's a good question to ask the lawmakers. So I would see them changing things like that to add more money in just the Social Security account if it ever becomes more of an issue. So it's something even myself I don't worry too much about, but I understand why people do worry about it.
And just a question for the group, does everyone understand when he talks about Roth IRAs and annuities, does anybody need explanation on
And
those
I'm going to keep going
products?
over stuff like that
Okay.
going forward. This is just to give you an idea of when we were looking back at those previous slides, what each of these, what a conservative allocation looks like, and what an aggressive growth allocation would look like, how much stock it has in it versus short-term investments or bonds.
Scared.
Here's Social Security. So some factors that affect your payment, when you take it, how long you end up living, if you end up collecting it while still working, paying higher taxes on what you're receiving, planning with a spouse. Tool that we have at Fidelity that a lot of other firms may have as well is give you an idea of how to get your highest payment. So of course the longer you wait, the more you can get. Every year you wait beyond your full retirement age, you'll get an 8% bump in pay from the Social Security Administration. But there's also some ways that if you take it early, you may actually end up getting more if you do like a file and suspend with your spouse than waiting until 70. So those are some tools I work with one-on-one with people, and I know other planners have some similar types of tools.
How do they determine what percentage you're going to get in Social Security when that first monthly check comes? How do they know what the percentage is? Is it based on what you earned during your life?
Exactly.
Okay,
They take
so it's
over your highest earning years over a certain number of quarters, and they give you your PIA amount, primary insurance amount, and then they factor that So here's some considerations for Social Security. Delaying it to get your highest amount if you have other sources of income that can cover you until 70. And you also expect to have a long life expectancy. Considering waiting and bridge an income gap. So basically, you want higher payments later to help cover the cost of health care expenses. You have other sources of income. You have a spouse. So this is something that comes into play when you file and suspend. You take your partner's benefits and you hold on to yours until you're 70 and you withdraw at that point while your Social Security amount continues to grow. And then also, sometimes it makes sense to take it early. Either you have health issues or you simply just didn't have enough money in retirement to support you year after year. That's when you want to start taking money early. And I work with people all the time to determine what the break-even point is if you take it early versus take it later. So those are some things to work on, whether it be with us or within your financial planner, to see when it makes the most sense to take it. So at age 62, you take it early, you get that reduced amount. If that same person would have waited until 70, they would end up with almost $2,400 a month.
We, some of us went to a, Madeline, help me, what's the retirement?
It was a pre-retirement
Pre-retirement
planning
thing.
seminar.
And Social Security was actually there, and they gave an example of this exactly. And they kind of did that, I won't tell you what to do, but they actually almost recommended taking it early, because in the long run, they told a story, okay? You end up getting more over the long haul than you do if you wait.
Right.
Because you're getting that money for a longer period of time.
Exactly. So it doesn't always make sense to wait till 70. So one of the tools I run with people will take your income into consideration, your spouse's income into consideration, average lifespan, and show you if you have a below average lifespan, or above average, and also show you the break-even point on when you take that. When you take Social Security, and I'll actually give you a list of steps to tell the Social Security agency how you want to receive your benefits, and it goes through maybe 3 plans if you take it early. If you take the primary situation, which most of the time is actually taking it before 70, where you do something where you file and suspend, you take your spousal benefits while suspending yours to allow those grow until you're 70, and then starting your benefits. So those types of strategies usually end up giving you more than waiting until 70. So I'm not surprised they told you that.
What happens if your spouse is already collecting Social Security, like a disability Social Security?
Then I believe it's up to you on how you handle your own Social Security, but you'd have to check on that one. I'm not an expert on Social Security. There's so many rules and regulations, but the tools that we have gives you step-by-step of what to tell us, the agency, and also I've heard from people where they'll tell them the steps that they want to take to maximize it, and the person working in the Social Security agency doesn't understand, so you usually have to ask for a manager or someone to get the type of benefit that you're looking for. So just keep that in mind. But those are the types of things we help out with, and many other firms can also help out with that as well.
From what you can see now for regulatory purposes, do you see anything in the near future that could be up for discussion on whether or not Social Security will look at the amount of pension a person has and offset? I know for a while that was being considered as through one of the houses to look at to see what kind of impact it would have. But have you heard anything of that coming out to?
Well, I always hear a bunch of things about everything from different people, but I haven't heard anything set in stone about anything like that. And there's a different story every year, it seems like, when it comes to the budget. So,
because that's another huge fear, is that they're going to get their hands on. Okay, you've saved all this money up. Now we're going to penalize you.
Right, and I hear fears like that. People worried about their 401ks Roths. You know, I usually try to keep things simple and say all you can do is save, and historically we've been okay.
Yeah.
That's something I'm not aware of, or
It would be a really, if it did get out, I think there'd be a really big push for people to retire and take their lump sums and run.
right, and that's why I don't
say,
see
no, I spent all that money.
I don't see that happening. But you know, if I had a crystal ball, I'd probably be sitting on the beach right now.
Right,
So.
true.
Do you have a question?
I was just gonna say, the offset issue usually works the other way.
So
Your private pension, you need to look at its rules for when you hit and start taking Social Security. Does your private pension, whether it be a public sector or an investment vehicle, does it have an offset clause that drops the pension by the amount of Social Security you're picking up? A lot of times they'll make them look good, but you overlook the offset. So it's very important that Maryland State does not, but some do.
Yep. Just a brief, just a couple more slides. Wanted to make sure we looked at, and then we'll talk about some important ways to save and think going forward. So here are some things to think about when it comes to your strategy living through retirement, some pros and some cons depending on how you invest your money in retirement. So thinking of your growth potential, certain guarantees if you have some type of annuity, and then how flexible your account is to access. So you're looking at growth, guaranteed, preservation, and flexibility. Guarantees is more like CDs, annuities, growth is your stock market, your stock funds, your bond funds. So here's a few strategies that people will implement with their portfolio, where you're only interested in having interest and dividends from your portfolio. You're having an investment portfolio where your main focus is growth, or you have a mixture of investments plus some guarantees. Interest and dividend only is where you're primarily looking at CDs or bonds held to maturity. These potentially can have lower credit risk if they're in an FDIC insured CD or a U.S. government bond. The cons of this is it typically requires you to have a sizable amount go into a product like this to give you to be able to buy into it or have the growth that you'd be looking for. There is limited growth potential. Interest rates change, you have interest rate risk, market risk. Of course, bonds do have the risk of defaulting as well, depending on how creditworthy the bond that you went into was. So, of course, something like a government bond is typically more credible than a lower quality corporate bond. Also, the cons is since interest rates are so low right now, you're still possibly losing money to inflation over time, even if you have your money in some kind of vehicle earning money for you. Investment only strategy, you're looking to potentially generate growth and income for yourself. You're able to automate withdrawals, you have flexible access to the money. The downside, the cons are many times you have to either be able to manage the portfolio yourself or have a planner work with you. And they're subject to market risk. The more market risk you take on, the greater up and down you can see with the portfolio. This is incorporating the two. So you have a guaranteed aspect that can help cover your essential expenses. And then you also have a growth aspect where you have diversification through the different parts of the market and still giving you some growth potential of the money and giving you some flexibility to accessing a portion that's not tied up in annuity type product. Downside, annuities may limit access to the funds while you're in the annuity until it starts paying out. It's difficult to manage multiple investments for most people themselves. So So you have to be in a fund that does it for you or have the will, skill, and time to rebalance and reallocate your portfolio over time. There's always a chance of loss. So some components of it, like we spoke about, is the investment portfolio, regular withdrawals, monthly, annual, quarterly. You have your fixed income, your variable annuities, where the fixed gives you a certain rate of return. A variable is tied to, does have a separate account where it's tied to the market and can go up and down and vary the amount of return the annuity pays out to you. What we typically suggest would be a mixture so that your more guaranteed expenses are covered, or your essential expenses are covered more by your guarantees, whether it be your lower risk bond funds, your Social Security, your annuities, and then your variable and fixed will cover some of your more of your discretionary expenses as well. And this is what that would look like if you're looking at a pie chart. So a portion of it in the mixture, 50%, portion of it in fixed, it's paying you a certain amount of interest that's predictable over time, and then the variable aspect, which can vary in the amount the annuity pays you as well, depending on how the separate account performs. So a lot of times people come in and ask about annuities. There's good and bad with every type of product out there. The good, of course, is giving you a lifelong income, potentially. Risks would be, before you annuitize the money, it is tied up. It can be expensive to get the money back out. Depending on who you buy the annuity from, their ability to pay the payments back out to you when you're ready to annuitize and live off the account. They can have commissions and fees associated with the annuities year after year, and locking into the annuity without fully understanding when and how you can access the account. And of course, variable, the risk is you can experience a loss with the portfolio since it is tied to the market. And fixed annuities don't really offer growth potential or cost of living adjustment. If they do, it's an additional cost to you to buy that additional feature in the annuity. So this is kind of what we talked about at the very beginning, the 4% withdrawal, looking at your budget, seeing how much you spend year after year. Typically when I'm running through a retirement analysis with someone, we usually use, I call it 85% rule. Well, we will take your monthly gross income, take 85% of it, and that's what the goal that we're aiming towards in retirement. Some of your expenses will go down, maybe like a mortgage or healthcare, or maybe not healthcare, but college costs, cars, kids, while others go up, like healthcare, vacations, trips. So the 85% takes that in consideration, and we then run the strategy to see if you're on track to meet your goals, whether it be the poor market or an average market. So that's something that I usually sit down and work with people on when we're working face to face. So a couple things I wanted to talk about outside of the slides to think about. So I know we talked about a Roth earlier. Usually something like that, the earlier you start, the more it makes sense to do. That's money coming from your checking account, money you've already paid taxes on. If you're under the age of 50, you can do up to $5,500 a year. If you're over the age of 50, you can do up to $6,500 a year. You still have time right now to do a prior year contribution up until the tax filing deadline. So the main advantage of that is it's growing tax-free for you. So you just take, let's say, example, if you put $5,500 in right now and you never contribute another dollar, you put it in an investment mix that, say, averages 7% a year. In 10 years, it's doubled to 11,000. Another 10 years, it's doubled to 20,000. So you can kind of see the compounding aspect of a Roth, where you put money in that you pay taxes on, that was already in your checking account for $5,500, how that can compound over time and give you quite a bit of money tax-free in retirement. I know another concern people have is the potential tax rates rising for us In the future, the Roth can help give you income. Once you turn 59 and a half, as long as the money's been in the Roth at least 5 years, it's completely tax-free. And if something were to come up before 59 and a half, you can always pull out your contributions, put that back into your checking account. You just want to leave the growth in there until you're 59 and a half, or that money will be taxed on and you will have a 10% penalty with the IRS. Another big advantage of the Roth is for people who are doing estate planning. They like to leave money to their heirs. That's money that you can pass on to them and they don't have to pay taxes on it. Whereas a regular 403b or traditional IRA would be enrolled, they'll end up taking the assets in an inherited account where they'll be paying taxes on it year after year for their withdrawals. And Roths don't have minimum required distributions as well. So once you turn 70, the IRS doesn't force you to start taking the money out. You're able to leave the money in there as long as you like and let it grow tax-free and use it for whatever you'd like.
Can you take money out of a CREF and put it in a Roth account?
Potentially, if your plan or the CREF, if it's not tied up in like the annuity position and it allows you to take money out, or if you reach the age where the plan allows you to do withdrawals, you could withdraw that money out and move it to a Roth. It would be a taxable event for you though, so you pay taxes on it like income for the year. So it is something that you could potentially do. So, yep.
What about a 401k?
Same situation. Yeah. So really the only difference between a 401k and a 403b is that's just IRS coding. 401k just means you work for a company like Fidelity or McDonald's, whereas 403b means you work for like a state or school.
For example, let's say you worked for a company before and you had a 401k and it's still with them, and you haven't moved it. Can you, I guess, you could move it into the Roth?
You could. It's called a Roth conversion. You just have to remember that every dollar you put into it is taxable to you. So if you move $20,000 and convert that to a Roth, it's like going to work and making an extra $20,000 and you're taxed on it. So that's the downside. The upside is then that money grows tax-free for you. You're not penalized for doing a Roth conversion. You're just taxed. Or the early withdrawal penalty, excuse me. So right now the IRS allows you to convert as much as you'd like to a Roth. You just have to pay the taxes on it whenever, at the end of the year when you do your taxes. Yep.
So if you were to borrow against your Fidelity account to pay off interest-bearing things, how does that work? You have to pay that back, obviously, but how do you pay it back?
So it comes from your paycheck monthly. So if you were to take a loan from your account, your paycheck's then depleted a portion of it until you pay that back. Typically there's also interest, but unlike a bank, the interest in like a 403b or 401k, that interest you're paying back goes back into your account. So that's the plus side. The downside is you're taking away from your principal amount, which could reduce the compounding effect you have over time. And that's another point to speak about. A lot of times people ask me about, should I pay off my debt first before worrying about saving for retirement? Typically we say unless you have credit card debt or any type of debt that's 10% or higher, at that point you probably would want to focus on that first. But if it's lower than that, an average rate, then you want to focus more on paying yourself in retirement versus paying that off first. And that's because of the compounding rate of growth.
So who determines what amount per pay gets paid back? Is that all done between Fidelity and the person who holds the account, or do you dictate how much you can pay back?
So we have a loan group at Fidelity that helps out with loans from the plan. I believe it depends on how much you take out, and usually the only thing that you can determine is the time frame that you pay it back. So I think usually they give you, a certain number of years you can pay it back, or you can pay it back in this number of years, and that determines your monthly payments.
And if you retire before it's all paid back, though, you don't have to.
Yeah, if you end up quitting, so I used to work a lot with 401ks in my previous role at Fidelity, where sometimes the plan would allow you to pay it back even after you've left. sometimes it would just default and then you get a tax bill for it. When you did your taxes, it would just end up being a taxable event, a withdrawal. Sometimes people had the ability, if they had the money, to move that money and do like a 60-day rollover, something like an IRA to offset it. But you know, a lot of times it's difficult to come up with that extra money, especially if you've left your job. But if you end up not being able to pay it back, it just ends up being like a withdrawal for the year versus a loan.
Whereas if you're borrowing and paying back, it's not taxable.
No, not taxable. The interest goes back to your account. Yeah.
What's the like the average interest rate on like a Roth?
So the Roth is just like a 403b. You can be as conservative as you'd like. So you know, Roth at Fidelity or any other financial, or most financial firms, you can be in something like a money market where it's earning 0.01%. You could potentially buy a CD, depending on how long the maturity date of the CD, or you could be in something as individual stocks. So the sky's at the limit potentially with the Roth. Most of the time you're looking at a mix similar to your 403b that you're bound to retirement, become more conservative, but there isn't really a set answer. You know, a lot of banks will have just what they call bank IRAs or IRA CDs where that's the only thing you're allowed to purchase. Whereas a brokerage firm like a Fidelity, like many other firms, you can buy stocks, mutual funds, bonds, CDs, money markets. So it really depends on how you invest it.
Okay.
Business CD more guaranteed on your return than say this crap. So if you got a long-term Roth CD, you put it in a CD and say it's 10 years or 20 years, I don't know how far they go. But obviously the longer you take it, because you don't have access to that money, the higher the interest rate.
Right.
Is that going to be like guaranteed? That doesn't sound to me like it's volatile, or it's like.
It's not as volatile in
but
CDs.
it's a high interest rate, which is, I mean, really good.
Right, but
Totally
right now
understand.
even 20-year CDs aren't paying very much either. So, and so you know, there's usually if interest rates go up and you want to get out of the CD, you usually have to pay fees to get out of the CD, and then you're losing your principal that way to purchase into a new CD or another investment. But CDs usually are more of a safer investment because they also have that FDIC coverage for most CDs, not all of them.
What is the average on a high now? Off the top of your head?
It's
Like less than 5?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But when I was a kid.
Yeah, much different. Much different just from not many 10 years ago. Yep.
I never heard of taking a loan on your CREF account, your retirement account.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, do you pay tax on that loan?
No,
when you take
as long
it
as you
out?
pay it back before you leave or retire, no, there's no taxes. It's just you replenishing the money from your paycheck every paycheck until the money's paid back. If you end up quitting or defaulting on the loan, then it turns from its defaults, which doesn't hurt your credit. It just basically means that that money is then taxable to you, like a regular withdrawal would be from the account or an IRA.
Something important to note as well, if you do take a loan from your 403b or supplemental and you're paying yourself back, you're not able to contribute to a supplemental 403b account from payroll.
Oh.
Just something to notate. We have to stop that deduction.
So loans can work out for you from the 403b because it does allow you to pay yourself back, not be taxable, and the interest is going back to you. But the downside is you lose out on opportunities like she mentioned, and losing out on market growth potential while that money's out of the account.
I just,
Mm-hmm.
so, Madeline, is that just extra money that you can't put in? Or, I mean, the college's, your mandatory contribution and your contribution would still go in, right?
Yeah, I believe it's just the supplemental part because that's the part that's coming out of your paycheck. So we can't, since you're paying yourself back, we stop that contribution because it's coming from your paycheck. I believe the employer contribution still goes in because the college is putting in that amount.
But wouldn't that be subject to the maximum amount per year, which would be, what, is it 12,000 now?
No, it's like 18.
Yeah, it's 18 if
It's
you're at 50,
18.
24
So
if you're
why
at
would
50.
you stop the SRA
Because
if
you're
paying
pay-
back, you weren't maxing out?
Because you're paying yourself back.
I-
Not my rule. not my rule.
I don't know what governs
The,
that, I'd have to look at that.
actually Fidelity or Tycref will say you can't, they'll actually send us the money back if we did make a contribution, because we're not supposed to. Because you are paying yourself back, so you're already taking money from your paycheck to pay back your loan.
Yes,
on
but
your-
I would think that the reason why that comes into play is for the maximum annual contribution.
I
Do you know
guess they
anything? Can you
figure-
speak to that?
I guess they figure that if you're paying yourself back and you took a loan, then you really don't have the extra money to be putting in your, that's what I think, but.
Well, that would have nothing to do with nothing. I mean,
Well-
yeah, taking off to pay for interest, if you're looking at interest that you're paying out, that could be the reason for the loan. It has nothing to do with the money it's sitting there, but do you know?
That's something
why?
I would have to look into why is the rules the way it is. But you usually can only borrow up to 50% of the vested value of the account.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't mean to cut everybody short, but there's
There's
a
a
class
class.
in here at 10, so I just want to say thanks to Zach. And if you have questions, feel free to stick around.